Good morning everyone and welcome to eMedia's Back to the Future of Demand Generation webinar in partnership with B2B Marketing. We've got eMedia's very own content creation team here to delve into the current B2B market, looking at today's buyer and go back in time to see how the buying process has changed in the last 5 years. They'll provide top tips on how to craft powerful lead generation and demand generation strategies, looking at the pros and cons of popular lead gen models and the importance of investing in content creation and promotion. For nearly 20 years, eMedia has been at the forefront of innovating global lead generation models to connect high-quality vendors to influential decision-makers and tech-savvy buyers. So in short, I suppose we understand the importance of delivering the right content to the right people at the right time. So step into our very own DeLorean as we explore the past, present and future of demand generation. Please welcome Gary, Holly and Gareth.
Hi. Hello. Along with everything else today, demand gen marketing is evolving alongside technology and enabling B2B marketers to get better at filling the pipeline with actual opportunities rather than just a bunch of leads. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to examine where demand gen is heading, how it differs from lead gen, and how you can make it work for you. But before we get to that, a little bit of background. Because, as Mike McFly discovered, you need to understand the past if you want to see where you're heading. Way back as far as 2012, the demand marketer had to do a lot of manual work to really track a lead through to revenue. But the rise of marketing integration platforms and their ability to closely integrate with CRMs has increased the confidence in data. Back then, and staggeringly even today, many companies only thought about leads via the medium of volume. Fill up that sales funnel and then unleash the sales team. They were crying out for leads and marketing provided them. And the thinking behind this was that if they've shown some kind of interest in what we're talking about, and back then we're talking product, not building thought leadership, then they're an opportunity. The thing is though, when those leads were dumped onto sales, they were quickly overwhelmed and couldn't prioritise which leads to focus on, meaning that time was squandered on no-hopers and some of the diamonds were obviously lost. Basically, these leads needed qualifying. These days, it's more about filling your pipeline strategically. You start by identifying your target and finding out what they care about. Discover their problems and then tailor your content to explore relevant solutions. You need to understand the buying journey and supply them with the relevant information when they need it. With these building blocks in place, you can then start developing a strategy that will create the conversions that you need. Now, you'll often hear the terms lead gen and demand gen banded around together. In fact, some people may try and tell you that they're the same thing, when they are definitely not. So, what are the differences and how do they work? I've got Gareth and Holly here, who are now going to explain how they differ. Gareth, can you sum up demand gen in just a couple of sentences?
Yeah, sure. I suppose in a nutshell, it's a branding exercise designed to engage people at large, build your presence and turn people into followers.
And Holly, how about lead gen?
To sort of flip what Gareth was saying, or to expand on it maybe, lead gen is fundamentally about taking those followers and then turning them into customers.
Okay, well that sounds great in theory, but can we just elaborate a little more on how they might actually function? Gareth, what are some of the methods you can utilise in a successful demand gen campaign?
Right, well, I suppose first of all, you want to make sure that you're giving away your best stuff. Whether that's a download, maybe a free offer, or another kind of promotional campaign, you want to make sure it's the highest quality content you can lay your hands on. I know this may sound counterintuitive, but giving stuff away for free that's of real value has a number of benefits.
For example?
Well, firstly, you're looking to create a sense of trust between your audience and your brand, which will increase the likelihood of them coming back to your content or your website. And secondly, if you're successful, then prospects may begin to advocate for your brand on your behalf. Yeah, for example, they might start sharing some particularly strong links on social media, or they might even start repeating information they've heard or read in a conversation. It's a bit like creating little brand ambassadors.
That's so true. I'm often passing off facts I've picked up in well-crafted content as my own insight. Did you know that Yahoo is actually an acronym for yet another hierarchical officious oracle? Or that Marvel Comics once owned the rights to the word zombie? Or that 64% of consumers have made a purchase based solely on social media content?
I did not, no. But now my life is all the richer for knowing that.
No problem. All right, anything else?
I suppose just that by offering something of real value, your audience will be much more likely to part with whatever information you require from them further down the line. It's all about building a relationship where they view your brand as something that helps them become better at their job and ultimately more successful.
Okay, all right. So what about display? Is that an avenue worth exploring at all?
I think these days display advertising, it often gets a bit of a bad rap. I mean, it certainly has limitations, but managed placements could work for demand gen.
What on earth are managed placements?
They allow advertisers to control the audience that their display ads are shown to. You can specify where they appear, essentially. This limits their reach to people who are more likely to respond positively to them. So as the primary purpose of display ads is to raise awareness, they can be a highly effective part of a wider demand gen campaign. Unfortunately, you're probably not going to get any conversions, but you will be increasing mind share and promoting your brand.
Okay, sounds interesting. What about webinars? I hear that they're sort of increasingly popular these days. Do you have any tips for people if they were going to produce one of those?
Yeah, they are quite popular at the moment. I mean, especially with tech companies and startups. I'd say if you want to utilise them, you need to make sure you go all in on them. I mean, I'd advise perhaps partnering with a relevant industry influencer and harnessing the power of their personal brand and the followers that come along with that.
And of course, back to your first point, give away your best tips, advice, strategies, etc., during the webinar, right?
Absolutely.
Holly, is there anything you'd like to add here?
Only really that I think people forget to optimize their email strategy, and it can be an incredibly powerful component of a demand gen campaign, but not when so many people are carrying on misusing it. When it comes to email marketing, A/B testing is beyond essential, and the old adage that less is more definitely applies. If you're going to resort to just carpet bombing your email list every day, all that's going to happen is you're going to turn prospective customers off, and you're going to harm your brand. So rather than hitting your list all the time, make sure your emails, are working smarter instead of harder. Again, I would actually also reiterate what Gareth was saying about demand strategy number 1, and that's to only give away your best stuff. Constantly spamming your database with low value offers is a surefire way to drive your subscribers crazy and then just push them towards that unsubscribe button. However, if you offer your list your very best tools and your best resources and offers they actually want to see, that's when you're going to have prospects who are looking forward to hearing from you.
All right, I guess what we're saying here, if you haven't managed to pick up on the subtle subtext, is that it really pays to invest in your content. It should be viewed as a long-term investment, a bit like demand gen itself, to be honest. Success is going to require consistent effort, which is something many businesses fail to do when it comes to content. I've personally lost count of the companies that want to run demand gen campaigns with us, and they do have a great product, but they've always been reluctant to invest in their content. You're going to be throwing money away if you're spending on a demand gen campaign and you haven't put the time and effort and budget into creating great assets. I mean, really, you just want to ask yourself some tough questions about why somebody should spend their precious time reading your content compared to that of your competitors. Okay, right, so we've covered up a few ideas for how to implement a demand gen strategy. So, sticking with you for the moment, Holly, could you maybe take us through an average lead gen campaign?
I could. Average lead gen campaign is a bit of a misnomer. It really depends what kind of campaign you're looking to run.
Okay, so what sort of different types are there?
Seeing as we are on a limited amount of time, let's stick to the main 3, and they're probably CPL, ABM, and BANT.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so starting at the top then, could you sum up CPL in a nutshell for us?
CPL is essentially just using relevant content. A client drives engagement with their target audience to generate leads, either doing it themselves or they can use a lead gen provider.
So what would be the first steps in this process?
Well, when we're running them, the first steps are an eMedia account manager working in collaboration with their client to identify their target audience. So, if we're talking about a major IT vendor, then they might be looking to target influential decision makers in the technology buying team, for example. From there, the client can further specify lead criteria around things like job role or industry, company size, maybe geographical region. So let's say they only want to target ITDMs, but they'll take them from all industries except public sector. They want company sizes of 500 employees or greater, and they want them from the following geographical territories, say the UK, France, and Benelux. From there, there's an agreement on how many leads we can realistically deliver over a specific time frame.
Okay, and where and how exactly does the content part come into this process?
So that's when we, as in the creative team, start to review the content that the client supplies. Or if they haven't got anything, then we begin the process of working with them to create something that's tailored specifically for this campaign. So once the correct content's been identified, that's when we can plan a sort of strategic calendar of placements and timings that are going to best promote their content via our weekly industry-specific email publications.
Okay, well, can I just state here that according to ReturnPath, our email bulletin audience is currently 3 times as engaged as our nearest competitors. Sorry, I couldn't resist getting that in there. So let's assume that the content is great and the leads are now streaming in. How would the client receive them?
Once the user has submitted their contact details to download the content, they receive the selected asset and then the generated leads, so that's the contact details of the users basically, they get sent to the client.
Okay, and in what kind of format do you send them over?
They can be auto-uploaded to their CRM or just sent out via a spreadsheet. As the leads are continually being delivered to the client, that's when it's up to them to follow up. But that's probably something we should discuss a little bit later.
All right, so would I be right in saying that email is the primary avenue used to generate leads?
Yeah, you would. Even today, that's still true, actually. Email continuously has been ranked time and time again as the most effective lead gen channel and the most important channel for distributing content. In a recent 2017, I think it was, survey quoted by Marketing Profs, 73% of B2B marketers responded that email was the most popular channel used to drive leads.
Did you just draw that stat from memory?
No, I brought a little cheat sheet with me.
Ah, right, okay, that's good. Gareth, what can you tell us about ABM, or to give it its full title, Account-Based Marketing? I know you were recently involved in a webinar series that we produced around this very subject, which I believe is still available to listen to.
Yeah, that's right, it is. There's also a very comprehensive guide to accompany it, which people can download for free from our website.
All right, so if people are looking for more in-depth information about ABM, that would probably be a good place to head once they finish listening to this. But for everyone else, could you give us a quick overview? I don't know, where did it come from and why do businesses seem so currently enamoured with it?
No problem. So right now there are more people involved in strategic purchasing than ever before. So B2B marketers and sales teams have been finding it increasingly difficult to interact and engage with valuable accounts. In fact, I have it on good authority that these days an average of 5.4 people are involved in the B2B purchasing decision, which means it's hard to track, target and engage with that ever-expanding amount of decision makers. You've also got the age-old marketing sales disconnect. In some businesses, marketing and sales may focus on a list of target accounts individually, but fail to unite and maximise their chances of reaching the most valuable clients.
I find that hard to believe.
And I find it hard to believe that you're not being sarcastic.
I have no idea what you mean.
Anyway, ABM basically emerged as a method for overcoming these challenges.
Okay, so ABM is fundamentally a strategy in which organisations deliver personalised marketing and sales content to a specific set of accounts. The value being that B2B businesses of all sizes can utilise it, especially when working with companies with multiple buyers or stakeholders. It's like a supercharged CPL campaign.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a far more targeted approach to identifying, engaging and closing valuable accounts. When launched in tandem with your other marketing strategies, including your usual lead generation campaigns, ABM will help align your sales and marketing teams to reach and close the accounts that will deliver the best ROI. You'll identify the most profitable accounts and generate bespoke content for each campaign. And from there, ABM allows you to build on your relationship and delivering a consistent message across your clients' favourite channels.
Sounds great, almost a little bit too great. What's the catch? There's got to be a catch. Holly, you presented the ABM webinars. What's the catch?
It's not a catch as such, but there are pros and cons.
Okay, give me the cons.
So ABM has its benefits, without a shadow of a doubt. And up front, it certainly sounds great. However, it's not completely straightforward. And given that it's a labour-intensive approach, it's just worthwhile working out whether or not you're actually going to reap the benefits that the extra work and cost would entail.
In what way?
Well, firstly, ABM is all about personalisation, so don't even think about mass-producing anything. What this means is that you're going to need to continuously create content tailored for each account. And that's time and resource consuming. Done well, and your sales and marketing teams, they're going to become more aligned. You're going to be working together to deliver a consistent message and a seamless experience to the client. Done badly, and it's money down the drain. If you have a handful of key accounts that are the main players in your target audience, then ABM might be for you. It can help you hone in on your important accounts and thereby helping to nurture the relationship with your current clients. ABM can also help to improve your ROI since you're garnering interest from the wider purchasing team, so you'll gain greater account penetration and expansion, and so on and so forth. Mainly, people just need to remember that it's not for everyone.
Right, so you've been warned. Do some research before you embark on an ABM campaign, and don't let people missell it to you. As I think I might have mentioned, go and check out our webinars and ABM guide. Right, on to the third and final part then. Holly, what can you tell us about BANT?
BANT is basically a system for scoring and ranking leads and opportunities that was invented by IBM in the 1950s. So it's old. It stands for budget. Do they have one, and when is it available? Authority, are they the final decision maker? Need, which is have they got a current project going on? And then finally time, which is when are they looking to sign off on a project?
The 1950s, that is positively ancient in marketing terms, so I'm going to assume that there's been some refining of the process over the years.
A little, but it's pretty much still functioning as it did back then.
So it's a sort of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of thing.
Kind of, yeah. But there are some things to remember. Firstly, there's a danger that by attempting to filter your results so early on, there's a very real chance you're going to end up excluding potential opportunities way too early.
Okay, like excluding people because they don't have a current need, or perhaps the time frame seems too long.
Absolutely. You're banking on people being utterly truthful in their responses, and sometimes people just don't know when they have a project coming up, so you could end up with a distorted perception of leads because some may not want to give up sensitive information at that time.
Or they simply don't even have it.
Precisely. But it can help when you're targeting further down the funnel or when you're seeking additional lead information.
You've preempted me a little bit there. I was just going to ask, when do BANT campaigns have a place?
In our experience, it's best deployed alongside your current content syndication activity. And you should definitely ensure that you have a follow-up strategy in place.
Okay, well, do either of you have any tips for that?
I'd say, number one, strike while the iron's hot. You've got to follow up promptly. Number two would be to tailor your follow-up as much as possible. There's absolutely zero point in filtering your leads and then not capitalising on what you've discovered. Number three, and in conjunction with number two, is that just to make sure you understand your prospect's needs.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Holly said there, and I'd also add that you should nurture every relationship. Every lead should be bespoke.
And of course, in yet another shameless plug, you can download our best practice guide to following up leads, which is available in the resources section and will help you convert new leads into buyers. So, if lead gen is about getting people to buy, do we really need to bother with demand gen at all?
Quite simply, yes. Good luck having any kind of effective lead gen strategy if you haven't done the demand gen legwork in the first place. I mean, it might sound like a bit of a facetious answer, but demand generation does what it says in the tin kind of title. It's the art of discovering and building the market for your products and then introducing them to your brand. The demand to your supply, essentially. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that producing a bunch of content and sticking on your website is all there is to demand gen, a sort of build it and they will come strategy. I mean, if only it was that simple. In the real world, there are two major features of demand gen you need to focus on if you want to be successful. Firstly, you need to be crafting entertaining and engaging content that's going to grasp the attention of total newcomers. And then secondly, you need to be promoting that content in the right places.
Okay, so you don't need to worry about the website at all then?
No, that's definitely not the case. Your website is still obviously one of your best tools in your arsenal. And ideally, all of your demand gen activities across other channels should have the aim of driving people back to it. Obviously, one of the best ways of getting people there is SEO. If people are already out there looking for a service that you offer, you want to ensure that your name pops up first on that list.
Right, okay, makes sense. Holly, what about social media? Is there a place out there for B2B in that?
Now, traditionally, social media is just absolutely B2C's turf. It's full of data about people's likes and their hobbies, purchasing habits and locational data, which is great if you're trying to flog a new TV or a Game of Thrones inspired package holiday. Is that useless when it comes to B2B? I think not necessarily. Facebook now has a host of new features that play right into B2B's hands, things like their advanced match feature, which allows you to enter your existing customer data so Facebook can locate other similar users and target them with your content.
Hang on a minute, I don't think I'm too comfortable with that.
No, don't worry, it's all encrypted and Facebook doesn't even do anything with that data. Beyond that, there's our old friend cookies. If any of you have logged into Facebook on your work computer for the first time, you might have noticed a drastic shift in the type of ads you get at home. And of course, there is always the tried and tested events and talks route, which can get forgotten in all of today's digital excitement. You cannot beat talking to people face to face.
You cannot. Right, so finally, let's talk about the fabled content itself. I mean, I don't know what you two think about this, but I found there's a common misconception that compared to their sort of B2C counterparts, it's a lot harder for boring old B2B companies to excel at content marketing. I mean, I don't really think that's the case these days, though. I mean, for example, General Electric has done an amazing job at creating unique content across multiple platforms and formats in a way that's consistently bold, relevant and engaging. I mean, from their jargon-free and visually interesting GE reports to a range of innovative virtual reality content to the lightweight but amusing Hey Girl memes on Pinterest and the much more well-known What's the Matter with Owen recruitment campaign. I think their approach to content marketing appears to have an extremely positive impact on their brand, and I would really advise Googling what they're up to.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what makes their approach so successful, and it's been their decision to think and act like a publisher. They've combined speed, agility and experimentation with an understanding of how to generate an emotional response from audiences, and they've managed it all while staying true to who they are as a company.
Agreed, definitely. The more enlightened B2B companies are now adopting much more of a campaign mindset, I think, and digital technologies have empowered B2B companies to run more impactful, data-led, engaging and tailored campaigns. I mean, whether they're for sales, marketing or lead generation. However, though, the scale and speed of digital communications reinforces the importance of careful campaign planning and implementation, right?
Yeah, you really do have to be careful. I mean, look at IBM's #HackerHairDryer campaign, which was quite understandably viewed as patronising and sexist and completely missed the mark. But the company was quick to apologise and they withdrew the campaign. And arguably this quick reaction, coupled with their mercifully strong brand equity, negated any long-term reputational damage. I actually would say that their What's at Work campaign feels more in line with the company's DNA and demonstrates the multitude of benefits of IBM's work in cognitive intelligence in a more compelling way. It's got a strong customer focus, but doesn't feel like a traditional customer campaign or an aggressive sales pitch. Instead, it tells stories that are actually newsworthy, and it uses platforms that have a broader reach and appeal.
Yeah, it really was really good. Gareth, do you have any thoughts on content creation? And is there anything that's particularly caught your eye as well recently?
Yes, and yes. I mean, I think the key thing to remember when creating demand gen content is to avoid the hard sell. I mean, at this point in the buying journey, your prospective customer isn't even in the sales funnel yet. The sales funnel is some blurry object in the distance to them.
Okay, so if you're not trying to sell to them yet, what are you trying to do?
Well, you're trying to introduce them to your brand and more subtly introduce them to your products. I mean, you're trying to get the customer to make the mental connection between your offerings and their needs. And to do that, you need to be getting their attention. So, as we mentioned earlier, this is where you pull out your best stuff. It's your chance to get creative, come up with content that's going to engage and entertain. I mean, take Intel, for example. At this very moment, they're in the middle of a fascinating demand gen campaign that you might have seen popping up over the web and on your social media channels. Is their campaign about their newest IaaS offering or enterprise storage solution? Nope. It's about their motion capture work on the Royal Shakespeare Company's production of The Tempest.
Now that sounds really cool, but how on earth does that help them to sell to corporate decision makers?
Well, it does a couple of things. I mean, first, and quite literally, it puts Intel's name in the limelight. It might get people talking about it or sharing links. And it even opens people to the idea that Intel create interesting content in the first place. So when you hit that decision maker with your lead gen campaign, they're more willing to engage. Secondly, it highlights the extent of Intel's reach, that they're out there working on cutting edge technology across a number of fields that you don't know about. And maybe that means they're working on something that you should know about. And lastly, arguably most importantly, there's a good chance this content is going to drive traffic to their website. I mean, once people are there, they have the opportunity to check out Intel's other offerings.
All right, now you put it like that, that sounds pretty smart. Okay, but is there anything people should be particularly mindful of when entering this sort of arena?
Well, one important thing to remember with demand gen content is to ensure that users aren't jumping through too many hoops to reach it. I mean, remember, you're establishing your name and credibility at this stage, so you can start asking for something in return later once you've already piqued their interest. So no gated content.
Yeah, that's worth bearing in mind, actually. No gates for demand gen.
Okay, so, right, we know what demand gen content should achieve and how to distribute it, but what specific types of content work best, do you think?
Oh, right, well, something that pretty much every company should have is a blog. I mean, you can use it to share thought leadership and advice. You can keep people up to date on your company's comings and goings, and I think most importantly, establish that you know what you're talking about within your field.
Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, your webinars and videos, they work really well at this stage. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, you can partner with industry experts or influencers. I mean, piggybacking on a famous name is always an excellent way to reach new audiences. What else? You've got infographics are great too. They're short, snappy and eye-catching. They provide potential buyers with key points at a glance. Likewise, listicles, perfect for demand gen activities. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but there's no denying they work. The key is to keep it consumable. I mean, until people get to know your brand, they're unlikely to commit to long-form content that takes its time to get its message across.
Okay, it sounds pretty interesting out there, but I guess the lasting impact of these new campaigns remains to be seen. But they are undoubtedly the new face of B2B demand gen. Creative and visual, human and emotive, wide-reaching yet personalised, and I suppose facilitating conversations rather than broadcasting information. I mean, GE, IBM, Intel, these are big business behemoths, and they're not known really for their envelope-pushing approaches to marketing. I mean, in fact, IBM became a byword for sluggishness back in the 80s when Microsoft and Apple just blew them out of the water. So if these old big boys are embracing these new techniques, I'm pretty certain it won't be too long before others follow, and more importantly, I guess, try to innovate stuff themselves. Holly, how does lead gen content differ from demand gen?
Lead gen content is slightly different. By this point, your demand generation strategy should have done the work establishing your brand's name as an industry expert. Hopefully, potential buyers now want your content, which means, as mentioned earlier, that you can start asking for something from them. As you're now gating your content, that means that content needs to change. Short form is out, so no more blogs, no more infographics. Instead, we're looking for long form pieces. We're talking white papers and ebooks and good old comprehensive guides. If people are going to part with their personal details, it needs to be in exchange for truly valuable content that they can't get elsewhere. Don't be afraid to opt for detail here. You're probably targeting people who know what they're talking about, so let your expertise show too. However, that doesn't mean it should be rambling and boring. There is never an excuse for bad writing.
There is never an excuse for bad writing. I'd just like to say that even though it might sound ridiculously obvious, if you're targeting international prospects, then make sure your content is in their local language. I mean, we run numerous international campaigns for our clients via our bulletins, and I always try and stress how important it is to do this. Translations are not that expensive.
So at this point, you can start to tie in your products and offerings. You might advise that a certain solution is the best way to achieve a goal, and look, you just so happen to offer that solution. But don't overdo it. Remember, the leads are still at the top of the funnel. Now, as they progress further down, that's when you can start to get a bit more salesy. No more beating around the bush at this point. You know the lead is the right fit for your business. You know they've got a need for your product, and you've already established a relationship with them. So start to bring in brochures, product specs, and case studies. Basically start to prime them for a sale. Obviously, there's a few more subtleties of content creation, and, conveniently, it just so happens that we've also covered that in a webinar before, which you can check out on our website.
Is anyone else getting a little bit of deja vu here? Okay, right, I noticed that we're sort of running out of time, and I know we wanted to take some questions, so I'm going to try and wrap this up into a final little package. I think what we've learned is, 1, demand gen and lead gen are markedly different, but you can't have one without the other, and it'd be wise to combine them as much as possible. 2, just because you're B2B, your content doesn't have to be dry and boring. And 3, make sure that you invest in your content. You will live and die by it. Is there anything you guys would like to add to that?
I suppose just that it's imperative that you have a good follow-up strategy in place to ensure that you don't waste those hard-earned leads once they start coming in.
For me, it's just maybe don't try to engage female IT professionals by asking them to play with hairdryers.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. All right, well, thanks you two. I think that's a pretty comprehensive overview. Should we take some questions?
Yeah, we've had quite a few questions sent in, so thank you very much for everyone for sending those in. We won't be able to get to all of them, but we'll go through a few. This one's from Carol in Nottingham. We've been running BANT campaigns for a while now, but haven't seen an increase in sales conversion, and we've been experiencing huge drop-offs at the data collection stage. Where could we be going wrong?
All right, Gareth, do you want to take that one on?
Yeah, sure. I think I kind of picked up on 2 issues there. In her question, she was saying people are dropping off when they're trying to collect the data, and then they're not being able to turn those leads into sales. So just to kind of address the first one. It really comes down to what you're asking and how much you're asking people. I mean, the more questions you ask, there's a much higher chance that people are going to start to drop off. Like, think about it yourself. If you end up on a landing page and you've got 1 million questions, I mean, how much can you be bothered to go through? How much of your personal information do you really want to give away? So just start asking yourself, what questions do you really need to be asking? If you can't answer that question yourself and say, we need to know this, then don't ask it. Simple as that. You're just going to turn people away and potentially drive away really good leads who just don't have the time to be filling in huge landing pages. And then that kind of links into the second part. We say you're not being able to convert them into sales. I mean, maybe there is an issue with the questions you're asking. Are they really giving you the information that you need to turn that lead into a sale? Or is it you're just asking questions for the sake of it? So maybe try and be a little bit more targeted with your questions and a bit more thoughtful about the structure of them. Yeah. Yes and no questions. If there's the obvious answer is no, please don't bother me, people are going to hit that no button. So try to avoid things like that. I think that just about covers it.
That answers that question. I suppose we are running out of time, so I'll keep this brief. I suppose the last one's actually from me. We've been talking quite a bit about the Intels, the IBMs of this world with enormous marketing budgets that aren't going to be matched. But I suppose, what can smaller businesses do with smaller budgets to undertake this sort of lead gen and demand gen?
I think if you're the reason we look at the bigger companies, obviously they're sort of the showstoppers of the industry, but there is so much that smaller businesses can do. Where you might have smaller budgets, you have to make more of your time, I think, is the answer. And one of the best ways that smaller businesses can do that is by online networking. So you can put a personal face on your business by going into LinkedIn groups and reaching out personally to potential customers to start that conversation. It's a one-to-one conversation that bigger brands won't be able to do. Similarly, you need to focus on quality over quantity. So whether that's investing your time in-house, or if you're throwing money out to outsource, you need to consider opting for perhaps a smaller volume of whether that's leads or an engagement rate, but from people that mean more to you. So rather than saying, oh, we'll take 500 leads of any company size and any profession, think about who will actually buy your business, who's actually going to invest in your product. I mean, we offer a sort of lead gen alternative called CPIs in our company, and they're great for small businesses because although they don't guarantee actual lead turnaround, they do offer people a chance to get their brand out to our audience. They get to expose themselves to our data and use their best content out there. So yeah, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Holly. I think that's basically it for today. So this has been eMedia's Back to the Future of Demand Gen webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Gary, thank you. Gareth, thank you. Holly, thank you.
Thanks a lot.